안녕하세요. My name is Holly Ross. I'm the executive director of N10, the nonprofit technology network. And N10 is an amazing community that is using technology to create social change. We have about 11,000 members from around the world, and we are all working on topics like how do nonprofits use social media, how do we become data-informed organizations so that we can create more social impact. The Nonprofit Technology Conference is held annually. We have about 2,000 folks show up, again, from around the world, so mostly the United States. And this is our chance to talk about some of the most important tech issues that are facing our sector, for us to identify those trends and best practices. And the reason I think that's so important is because so many people who are focused on technology and nonprofits, they do that work all by themselves in their organizations. You know, they're often the only person who cares about technology. So to get to bring these people all together once a year is a really important part of the work that we do. And, you know, we have so many people say, oh, it's my family reunion once a year, you know, and that means a lot to us. I think the first thing that has really changed for nonprofits because of social media is the responsiveness that our stakeholders demand from us. And they want replies not only to every question that they have, but they want those replies really quickly. We have two organizations here. One is the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, and they do research and other kinds of work, advocacy work related to breast cancer. And then we also have Planned Parenthood Federation of America. They're a women's health organization. They provide services for women around the country. Those two organizations had worked together for a very long time providing breast cancer screening. And this year, earlier this year, Susan G. Komen decided to defund that program, to not provide funding for that program with Planned Parenthood going forward. And when they made that decision and it became public, the supporters for the Planned Parenthood Federation, or PPFA, they became very vociferous. They really took to social media to voice their opinions about that move and their discontent with that decision. And they were posting on Twitter and on Facebook and on LinkedIn and everywhere, YouTube, everywhere they could. And, you know, in the old world, you know, even just 7 or 8 years ago, the Komen Foundation could have taken their time to respond, right? That those kinds of complaints would have come into the foundation via email or fax, but not in quite as public a forum, quite as quickly. And they could have taken some time to craft a response and get it out there. But this is the new world. And Komen took, you know, right around 24 hours to get a response out into the public. And in the meantime, every hour that went by, PPFA's supporters questioned out loud, where's your response? What's going on? So it was really, in the end, a really difficult situation for Komen. And I think it just really underlines that point that our supporters want to hear from us immediately when there are issues. I think the other thing that's really interesting and goes along with that is this idea of transparency. You know, it wasn't enough for Komen to say, we are ending this program. Because people can post in these very public ways, they also want to ask questions like, you know, why are you doing that? And is there a financial reason or a political reason? And I think this idea that our stakeholders now believe that they should be able to know everything about the organization. What are the programs? How do you fund them? How does my donation support it? So as all of our communications in particular move online and become data points, our communities are requesting access to those more and more often. So we have to be more transparent as organizations.
True.
And those are, I think, they're good things in the long run, but they're very difficult for nonprofits to change around. And so it's frustrating for a lot of nonprofits, I think. But one area where social media has also put a lot of focus, which I think is good and also something that we're well poised to deal with, is that social media really lets us focus on relationships with individuals in a way that we couldn't before. Because in the old communications model of broadcast, you would send one email message out to the 10,000 people, and even if you're segmenting your list very well, you're still sending one message to a number of people. And now with social media, you're able to have these individual conversations, right? And a stream of @replies on Twitter, or sharing comments back and forth on Facebook or on a blog post. And those kinds of individual interactions, I think, are helping us see more deeply into what motivates people to be engaged with our causes and why our clients need us. So that focus on relationships, I think, has been a really exciting part of the change. So I definitely think that nonprofits, no matter where they are in the world, need to invest in IT in general. I think that technology helps us do the same things we've always done, only do them more efficiently, whether that is moving your list of supporters and clients into a database or moving communications towards social media. And the more efficient we are, the better we're serving our mission, right? We have more resources to do other things. And serving our mission is our top priority. The other reason I think that's so important is because the funding that we receive to do this work is not, well, we owe those people who help us do our work financially. We owe them a lot, and we have to be very responsible with the funds that they give us. And so we have to be as efficient as possible. So I think that's really important generally. And for social media specifically, I also feel that while there are a lot of technology things that are trends or fads, we've seen the culture change the technology and the technology change the culture at this point to a point where this way of communicating is not going away. And the lessons we're learning from using social media now are going to be applicable far into the future, whether we're applying them in Facebook or the next big social network. I think the most important thing for smaller nonprofits to do is to really focus. And I think, so one of the things that we do here at NTEN, we have an annual survey and report on social media use by nonprofits, the benchmarking report that we do. And one of the findings from that report is that the vast majority of nonprofits spend very little time on social media. They have very little staff time to devote to social media. Most have less than 1/4 of a full-time person. So they're spending 10 hours or less per week on social media. They also don't budget very much for social media either. So, right, we're all working with very limited resources here. So that, to me, says that if you have limited time and limited resources, you have to be very focused and know why you're using social media and what you want to accomplish. So rather than, trying to say, well, I have to be in all of these spaces. I have to be in LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and on YouTube and everywhere else, is to really start with the question, what is it that I need to accomplish, and work backwards from there. So if one of your organization's primary objectives is to engage more volunteers, think about how you can engage more volunteers or recruit more volunteers in social media, and what's the right medium for that. And it might be that Facebook is the best place, but maybe you really need skilled volunteers, like trained accountants. Maybe then LinkedIn is the best place to do it, right?
True.
So you don't have to be everywhere, but be very focused and, set a goal of recruiting 10 volunteers, accounting volunteers from LinkedIn over the next quarter. And then you'll know where to spend your time. So when it comes to raising money and social media, I think I said social media does not raise money. People raise money.
Yes.
in a way to say that it's not, that social media is just a tool, that it's how you use it that makes it effective or not. That's the important point, I think. We've had so many technological advances in the last 25 years.
Yes.
And we sort of place this magic on them.
Okay.
You know, they're magically going to make our lives better. And they do make our lives better in many ways, but they still aren't omniscient beings, right? We still have to operate them well to make that magic happen. And I think one point that really illustrates this, there is a report that's released every year here in the United States by an organization called Giving USA, and the report tells us about how much philanthropic money was donated in the U.S. in a given year. And a company called Blackbaud here in the States usually does an analysis of this data. And one of the things they looked for a couple years ago was, well, let's look at this data and figure out how many of those donations came in online, right, as opposed to people writing a check and sending it in the mail. And the answer a couple of years ago was 8%. 8% of total giving was made online.
Okay.
And that's really low when you think about it.
Yes.
You know, we've had email in our fundraising toolbox for almost 20 years now. And we've had websites for almost 20 years now.
Yes.
And still, online giving is only 8%. And so I think partly we have to get better at using these tools, but we also have to remember that our audience has to get used to using these tools in this context as well.
All right.
So it'll be a while, and that's why I still think that the relationship stuff is really important, and it's going to be driven by these analog or offline interactions for quite some time. So N10 is a nonprofit ourselves, and we see a big part of our work is community building, like a lot of other nonprofits. And I think that we really see that, the digital versus analog is a false dichotomy. We see digital as an extension of analog, and analog as an extension of digital. So I'll go back to our conference as an example. We love that people feel like when they get to the conference that it's a family reunion, and they have amazing conversations with one another. And what's amazing about that is that they have these fantastic conversations, and then they post it on Facebook or they tweet about it so that other people can benefit from the conversation they just had, right? At the same time, on the flip side, we have a lot of people that come to the conference that have only met via online channels before they get to the show. So they've tweeted back and forth, or they have had a conversation on Facebook or in our own online groups. And so they know each other, they know each other a little bit, but they've never actually met. And then they get to the show and they extend that online relationship into the real world. So I think they go together, and it's not an either or, it's how we put them together in smart ways to extend the meaning of our relationships no matter where they're taking place. So first of all, I'm not an expert in social media, but I am a user, a heavy user. There are some very interesting things going on, lots of fun tools coming up. I think our crowd in the N10 community is very excited about Pinterest right now.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of folks figuring out how to use Pinterest to help tell their stories and connect with folks. So, and I think that has a lot of potential for nonprofits. So that's definitely the big one that's on the horizon. But I think also that another important advance in social media for nonprofits right now are all of the tools that are helping us analyze and understand what's working and what's not in our social media use. So, for example, on Facebook, the Insights application for your page.
Oh, okay.
they keep extending what that application can do, and we can learn more and more about who's coming to our Facebook page and what they're interacting with and where they come from in the world, and we can learn a lot more about our social programs than we could before. And there are a lot more paid services around that as well that are building analytics in. So, there's lots of tools like Radian6 or Scout Labs, which has a new name. But then Spreadfast, there's a ton of tools out there that provide these kinds of analytics now and are helping us understand what's working and not, and also providing workflow for us that helps us make use efficiently of our social media time. And those tools, I think, are most exciting for the sector because they make it, they help us do things in impactful ways, which is very exciting, regardless of what kind of tool you're using. Well, I'm very excited to be able to be a part of this. I think one of the most exciting things about social media is that nonprofits from around the world are on the same playing field, using the same kinds of tools and doing the same kind of work. And it's really exciting to be able to share some stories. And I can't wait to hear some stories from your own conference. And I'll look forward to hearing those. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And are you ready for the big finish?
Yes.
감사합니다.